your guidance on mobile phones, and I'm struggling to see what's new. Can you explain?
Yes, well, thank you, Pat. Look, I would accept that right across the country, the vast majority, I would say, of our schools do have a mobile phone policy in place around acceptable use of the mobile phone. But I do know in many instances, young people still have access to their phones, at lunch break or at small break or whatever, or indeed during the break of class. And all of the evidence is telling us, and I hear this from staff in schools themselves, I hear it from parents, many refer to the mobile phone as the scourge of the classroom. And indeed, all studies are telling us, whether it's the United Nations last year telling us that removing phones from our schools would improve learning opportunities for our children. It tackles classroom disruption and, of course, issues around cyberbullying. And,
Okay, but what you've offered is some guidance to schools as to what to do, but you're leaving it up to them. Some will allow the kids to keep their phones in their school bags. Some will maybe have lockers provided for them, which will allow them to access them maybe during breaks and so on. Some brave schools will say no phones from the beginning of the day to the very end until you're on your way home, then you can access your phone. So,
Well, actually, to be more accurate there, the instruction from the Department of Education is that there will be no access to phones throughout the school day. Now, obviously, young people are free to bring the phone to school if that's the wish of their parents, or indeed, and schools then will have the autonomy to decide how they will deal with that. And you're correct. Some of them will choose to say that they're in the locker, not seen and not heard throughout the entire school day, because that's the instruction from the Department of Education. And I want to be clear, as I say, great work has been done in our schools, but we need a uniformity of action here now across all of the schools. We need to develop in our schools a culture where our students have, if you like, a mental break from the mobile phones for the duration
yeah.
of their,
And I
their,
think
their
that
learning in
the
school.
academic world is at one, I think, with you on that, really they are a distraction, they're a vehicle for cyberbullying and all the rest of it. But to be quite clear, you're saying that from the beginning of the school day to the very end, there should be no access to the mobile phone through lunch breaks, whatever, no access at all until the kid is
Yes,
going home.
100%, yes. And if children need to be, or young people need to be contacted, obviously they can be contacted, via the school secretary or whatever. If, for example, schools do have autonomy and discretion. So if, for example, a young person requires a mobile phone in terms of, a medical issue or whatever,
Sure.
that discretion is there. But the policy and how it will work in each individual school, and schools are individual, that will be created, that policy will be created in consultation, as all our policies are now, with students, parents, teachers, SNAs, the entire school staff. But I do want to say, alongside that, we will continue education in terms of digital literacy. So there in the month of May, I did launch the Literacy, Numeracy and Digital Literacy Strategy. We will continue resources into our schools via WebWise and resources of that nature. And we will also continue to fund digital infrastructure for our schools. Over the past few years of this government, 150 million has been paid out to schools to provide for digital infrastructure. So what we're saying is we will continue the education, we will provide the infrastructure, but specifically in terms of access to the phone during the school day, it's not necessary during the school day. And indeed, studies tell us as well that it interrupts this conversation, friendship building in schools, because we see at lunch break or whatever, young people with their noses still stuck in their phones. That doesn't foster, school spirit or friendship building or whatever. And again, as I say, all the studies, whether it's the US Surgeon General telling us that, for example, social media has been a major contributor to mental health issues for our young people. Growing up in Ireland, studies telling us that 13-year-olds in Ireland are twice as likely to be at risk of depressive symptoms, particularly our girls, because of what happens on social
Okay.
media
Now,
via mobile
the
phones and all of that.
ISSU, the representative body for student council, said mobile phones are often used during the school day for educational reasons, with junior cycle classroom-based assessments and leaving cert projects in subjects requiring the use of the internet. And not all schools are well resourced with a laptop for everybody.
Well, again, I will go back to the point that more than 150 million has been given directly to schools in terms of ICT grants to ensure that they do have the infrastructure that's required in terms of digital learning and use of digital technology in our schools. And we will continue to do more in that space as well. It is not necessary for students to rely on the mobile phone in the school. And in fact, look, I've worked for many, many years myself in the education sector. I know what's happening in the schools in terms of, the reliance by students themselves on the mobile phone. And I know students like to use the mobile phone, and I know they have, whether that's in school or outside of school or whatever. But my point is, it is not a requirement during the school hours.
Okay.
It is not necessary for their learning during the school hours. We will continue to resource digital infrastructure for our schools. As we are doing presently with over 150 million, we will do more going forward. It's not a necessary part of
Now,
their equipment.
someone else makes a point. Teachers should also have no access to their phones except when they're in the staff room, because there is recorded notion of the teacher looking at their phone while the kids all have their head down doing some designated work, and the teacher really has nothing to do except keep an eye on them. That the teacher takes out their phone and they're doing whatever they're doing on their own phone, and you've got to not say do as I say, but do as I do.
Look, again, I will say the policy as to how this will be implemented in each individual school will be constructed by the individual school. They have the right and they have the autonomy to do that. The department is issuing an instruction around the access for students throughout the day. But obviously what we're seeking in the broadest instance is that there would be a culture right across our schools of no access to the mobile phone during class time and during, the hours of school for our students who are, by and large, 18, 19 years of age, still within the care of the school. And obviously, I have no doubt that schools will show the appropriate leadership in that respect.